What are authentication and authorization? Let's clear these concepts in just 2 minutes. Suppose you are a student at a school. Now you open the website of your school and the website is asking you to log in. If you are a student, then your school must have provided with you some username and password, right? Now by entering those credentials here, you are basically verifying your identity with the school, that yes, you are a student or a member of this school. Then only website will allow you to enter in the website, right? This concept of identity verification is called authentication, which is basically ask you who are you, okay, and you are saying I am happy and this is my password and I am a student, that your school will identify itself. So once you enter this, the school will check in their database and find that you are a student of the school. Okay, so that's all about authentication. Now let's come to authorization. Now obviously there are other departments in your school like teacher, administration department, clerical department, etc., right? So when you log into your school website with student roles and rights, now suppose your school website has these four functionalities. As a student, and as a student, yes, you are able to view the result, but you as a student cannot edit or submit the result, right? And only a teacher can do it. When a teacher will log in, then they have the right to do it. Then yes, you can pay the fees, but you do not have any salary, therefore you cannot even view this salary tab. Okay, so this kind of access to the resources, different resources based on the user's roles like student, teacher role, admin role, etc., is called authorization. Great, that's the whole idea. And remember one thing, authentication will always happen before authorization. Okay. All right, I think now these concepts are very much clear to you for your lifetime. And here I also have written the definitions of authentication and authorization. These I already explained, but written here so that while revision, just revising just before the interview from the book will be very quick and fast. Okay. What are the types of authentication in Node? We have 5 main types of authentication, and it's not just in Node but in almost all technologies. Okay, here are they: basic authentication, API key authentication, token based authentication, and JWT authentication is a type of token based authentication only. Then multi-factor authentication and certificate based authentication. In the upcoming question, one by one, we will explore all of these authentications. What is basic authentication? Very simple. Authentication means verifying the user's identity, right? Now, in basic authentication, a user will log in with a username and password in the UI, and then these username and password will be passed to the REST API, Node REST API. And then the REST API will validate these credentials in the database, and then only the user will be authenticated. See, it's very simple and straightforward authentication, right? No confusion. But it has one disadvantage. In basic authentication, username and password are sent as the plain text only over the network. Plain text, sorry. The password is not encrypted or encoded, therefore it is not considered a secure method of authentication. Okay, so also there is one more thing. In basic authentication, the password is stored in the database in the text format only, which is again a security risk. Okay, I will explain you in the upcoming question how to secure the password. Okay, but for now, you know the basic authentication and its disadvantage. Both are written here. What is basic authentication and what is its disadvantage for the later revision from the book. What are the security risks associated with storing password as plain text in Node.js? Very short but valid and practical question. Suppose this is your user table and here are the username and password stored as plain text, right? Storing password like this can be very risky because if someone somehow gets access to your database, then that hacker can just use these all usernames and passwords to log into the websites and they can steal your information, the access, all the things, right? But if you will use encryption algorithms and save the username and passwords like this in encrypted format, in that case, even if the hacker gets these username passwords, still they have to first decode them first, and there are many encoding and decoding algorithms, therefore it will be bit difficult for them to decode it. Okay, great. I think you got it now. Why storing password as plain text in database is a bad idea, right? And the same thing is written here for the risk about the unauthorized access of plain text passwords. And yes, there is one more thing, the compromise of other accounts. So basically, when many users reuse the same password across multiple accounts, right? Same password for their bank account, Facebook, everything. So again, if a hacker knows your Facebook password, then they might be knowing your bank password also, because it can be same, which is again very risky. So but one thing, so Gmail, Facebook, banks, that's why they never store passwords as plain text, and they use different algorithms for encoding and decoding password. So that's why the same password for you it is same, but in the different databases of bank, Facebook, it will be stored in a different format by using different encryption decryption algorithms. Great. Conclusion is simple. Never store passwords as plain texts in the database as a developer. What is the role of hashing and salt in securing passwords? A very interesting concept. The goal of hashing and salt concept is to secure the password or confidential information. Okay, that's the first thing. For example, we have a password like this. Now, hashing will be used to encrypt or encode this password using some algorithm. For example, this SHA-256 is the name of the algorithm. Okay, so as a result, one encrypted password will be created like this. And this is good for one level of security. Okay, but if a hacker also knows your password and also the algorithm name, then again it will be no longer secure, right? Therefore, to add more security to the password, we first create a salt. Okay, by using this bcrypt or crypto library. There are many libraries, especially in Node.js. So here salt is nothing but it's just a random string, okay, will be created by these libraries. Now listen carefully. Then we combine this salt and the hash password together to create a very secure password like this. Here is the salt, here is the hash, and together they are making a very secure password, right? And that is the whole idea of hashing and salt. Now, if the hacker even knows the encrypted password and the algorithm, but they can't know the salt, then they cannot decrypt your password. Okay, they cannot. Great. Here I have written the definition of hashing also. How can we create hash passwords in Node.js? So here I will show you quickly the code for creating a secure hash password using the crypto library. For that, there are 5 steps. First, import the crypto library. Then define a function which will hash and salt the password. Here inside this function, we are passing this our plain text password as the parameter. Now listen carefully. Then by using this random bytes method of the crypto library, we will generate a random salt. Random salt is nothing but a random string only, okay? Then we will create the hash object using one algorithm. Here it is SHA 256. Now hash object is there. Now we will use the update function of this hash object only for combining the above salt string and the plain text password inside the hash object. So in short, now this hash object has the both thing. Okay, but this hash is an object now and we need a string password, right? So we will convert this hash object to a hexadecimal string by using the digest function of this hash object only. Great. Finally, we will return the complete secure password by adding this salt dot hash string, and the output will be something like this, a very long string. Now see, later when you will try to, this is your secure password, right? So later when you will decode, then you will use this first salt string which will be used, and then it will separate the salt and the plain password from the second string. Okay, that's how it works. And yes, you can store this salt string first and hash string separately in your database to make your password even more secure. Okay, got it? Great. That is the way how to hash passwords, and that is the answer to this question. What is API key authentication? Alright, after basic authentication, this is another type of authentication, and let's see an example here. Here is one API key example. See here, this is the screenshot of a Postman tool which is used to basically test your APIs. Okay, and here we are not passing the username and password, see, like the basic authentication, but we are simply passing this API key like this. So this is just very simple API key authentication. And here the rest, what will happen, how this API authentication work, basically the REST API owner, or you can say the developer, will create an API key, and he will share with all the users or the clients of the REST API this key. Okay, and the same key will be used by multiple clients for authentication in the API. See, and the benefit is that the same API key can be shared with multiple clients, right? So managing username and password and storing them in the database is not at all required here, because there is only one API key. But the disadvantage is also very big. So because this API key can be shared by your clients further very easily, okay, and therefore unwanted clients can access your REST API, which is again not a very good thing, right? And the same thing is written here also. What is API key authentication and what are its disadvantage? That's the answer. What is token-based authentication and JWT authentication? Nowadays, this is the most popular kind of authentication technique used in REST APIs. Here, token-based authentication is a type of authentication, and when we use JWT as the token in token-based authentication, then that is JWT authentication. And you can also say like JWT authentication is a type of token-based authentication also. Okay, so JWT stands for JSON Web Token. For interviews, this JWT authentication process is very important, and that I'm going to explain here. And here are first the main players in the authentication process. First is our browser, which will act as the front end, you can say, also front end, you can think of it. And then we have the REST API in Node, which you can also call middleware, server side, back end. Okay, now there are 8 steps in this authentication process of JWT. First, user will from the client side send the username and password through the browser and send them to the API with a post request. Now, of course, I'm not saying that browser will send to the client and client will send to the server. Basically, both will send to the API server. Okay. Then in the second step, the API will receive these credentials, right? And they will authenticate, or you can say validate those username and password, whether it is valid or not. If credentials are valid, a JWT token will be created and that will be sent back to the client as a response. Clear? Now, if the credentials are not valid, it will not return, API server will not return an JWT token, rather a authentication error will be written. Then as a next step, the client will store this JWT token in the local storage or in the cookies of the browser. Okay, now listen carefully. When the JWT token is stored, then for every future or subsequent request for the data from client, this token will be sent in the header of every request to the REST API from the client. Okay, got my point? Token will go every time. Username and password will not go then. So now when the API will receive the token, it will check and validate the token signature with the help of some algorithm. And if the token is valid, valid means it must be the same JWT token which initially the API has sent to the client. Okay, and if it is valid, then only the API will send the data to the client. Great. Finally, the client will display the data in the browser, and that is the whole process which I make simpler for you. And that's the reason why for any website we have to enter username password only once, because after first time you will receive the token, and then only the token will be sent for the validation, not the username and password again and again. Okay, so this is the working of JWT token authentication. And yes, there are other authentication techniques also, but this is the most popular one, and that is the answer to this question, the steps and the explanation. Okay, what are the parts of the JWT token? If you want to see a JWT token, how it looks actually, then here it is, and it is a site named jwt.io, which is normally used to decode the JWT token. So here on the left side is the JWT token separated by .c. Here we have three parts in different colors. The first part we call it header. The header mainly consists of two things. First is the type of token, which in this case the type of token is JWT. The second thing is the algorithm name that is used to generate this token, such as HMAC, SHA-256. Those are the popular algorithms. Then the second part of the token is payload, which contains the claims. Claims means the information about the token, like who is the issuer of the token, who issued the token, then the subject of the token. So subject means which typically identify the user. It is basically the user also, you can say. Then the expiration time of the token, and the time when the token was issued. So all is like claims, the information about the token. Okay, that is payload. Last is the most important part, and that is signature. Okay, so whether your token will valid or not, that is verified by the signature only in the REST API. When they will receive, then they will verify the signature. Okay, here signature is created by encoding the header and the payload of the token. Okay, so as I said, REST API will receive the token and they will verify the signature. Great. I think that is the whole idea about a single JWT token. And here I have also written the three parts of it, header, payload, signature, and that's pretty good, and that's the answer. Where JWT token resides in the request. See, the postman tool is here and JWT token is here, and if you see, it is inside the request header. Okay, so we have the inside the request we have the header, the body, So token will be inside the header. Here key is this authorization we will say, and value is the token value, token actual value. Okay, and it is written here also in request header. Very simple short answer of this question.